Life changes in unexpected ways. One moment you're celebrating your 10th wedding anniversary in your dream home, and the next you're sitting in a sterile hospital room, watching your husband struggle to breathe through an oxygen mask. That's where I found myself 3 months ago when Mike's persistent cough turned out to be something far more serious. I'll never forget that day in the doctor's office. Dr. Stevens' face was grave as she showed us the scan results. "The mass in his lungs is significant," she explained, her voice gentle but firm. "We need to start aggressive treatment immediately." Mike squeezed my hand so tight it hurt, but I barely felt it. My mind was racing, trying to process what we were hearing. Stage 3 lung cancer. My healthy, active, never smoked a day in his life husband had stage 3 lung cancer. What are our options? I asked, proud that my voice didn't shake. Dr. Stevens outlined a treatment plan. Surgery followed by an aggressive round of targeted therapy using a new drug that had shown promising results in clinical trials. The catch? Our insurance would only cover a fraction of the cost. How much? Mike's voice was barely a whisper. The complete treatment course will cost approximately $380,000. The number hung in the air like a heavy cloud. We weren't poor. Mike's job as an architect and my work as a high school teacher had allowed us to live comfortably. We'd even managed to buy our dream house 2 years ago, a beautiful Victorian with a wraparound porch that we'd spent countless weekends restoring. But $380,000? That was beyond our means. "We'll figure it out," I promised Mike that night as we lay in bed, neither of us sleeping. "We have some savings and I can pick up extra tutoring hours. Maybe we can get a second mortgage." Mike turned to face me, his eyes reflecting the moonlight streaming through our bedroom window. "Emily, I don't want you to destroy yourself trying to save me. Promise me you won't." I kissed him instead of answering. How could I promise something like that? The next few weeks became a blur of hospital visits, insurance calls, and loan applications. I took a leave of absence from teaching to care for Mike, using up all my saved sick days. Our savings were draining faster than I'd imagined possible. Between the initial tests, consultations, and the first round of treatment, we'd already spent over $50,000. That's when Mike's family decided to get involved. The Andersons had always been particular. From the moment Mike brought me home to meet them 8 years ago, his mother Margaret had made it clear she thought her son could do better than a public school teacher. His father Robert, a successful business owner, had spent our entire engagement dropping hints about prenuptial agreements and protecting family assets. Still, I wasn't prepared for what happened when they showed up at our house one Sunday afternoon, while Mike was resting after his latest treatment. "We need to discuss a solution," Margaret announced, settling herself primly on our living room sofa. She looked around with barely concealed disdain at the vintage wallpaper we carefully restored. "This house, it's really more than you need, especially now." I felt my spine stiffen. "What do you mean?" Robert cleared his throat. "What Margaret is trying to say is that this property is a valuable asset. If you sold it, you could easily cover Mike's treatment costs. Sell our home." The words felt like acid in my mouth. "This is our dream house. Mike loves it here. And you'd rather keep a house than save your husband's life." Margaret's voice dripped with accusation. "How selfish can you be, Emily?" I stared at them, speechless. Robert pressed on, pulling out what looked like real estate listings. "We've already contacted some agents. In this market, you could get at least $450,000. That would cover the treatment with some left over. You could move into a nice apartment." "Stop." My voice was sharper than I'd intended. "This is our home. Mike and I will figure something out." Margaret's face hardened. "Figure something out? Like you've been figuring it out for the past 3 weeks. Meanwhile, my son gets weaker every day because his wife is too proud to make the obvious choice." "The obvious choice would be for his parents to help with his medical bills," I shot back before I could stop myself. The silence that followed was deafening. Margaret's face turned an interesting shade of red, while Robert suddenly became very interested in his shoes. We're not in a position to help financially right now," Robert mumbled. "Business has been difficult lately." I thought about their new Mercedes in our driveway, about the expensive cruise they'd just returned from last month. Something inside me snapped. "Get out," I said quietly. "Get out of our house." They left, but not before Margaret turned at the door, her eyes cold. When Mike's condition worsens because you were too stubborn to sell this ridiculous house, I hope you can live with yourself. I managed to hold it together until they were gone, then sank onto the stairs and burst into tears. That's where Mike found me an hour later after waking from his nap. Emily. His voice was worried as he slowly made his way down the stairs. What's wrong? I wiped my eyes quickly, trying to smile. Nothing, honey. How are you feeling? But Mike knew me too well. He sat beside me, wrapping an arm around my shoulders. They came by, didn't they, Mom and Dad? I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. Whatever they said, ignore them, he whispered, pulling me closer. We're in this together. But it wasn't that simple. Over the next few weeks, the Andersons launched what could only be described as a campaign. They called other family members, telling them how I was refusing to take reasonable steps to help their son. Suddenly, I was getting calls and messages from Mike's aunts, uncles, and cousins, all urging me to do the right thing. Just sell the house, his cousin Amy pleaded during one call. The family's talking about pulling some money together to help, but not while you're being so stubborn about this. The final straw came when they showed up at the hospital during one of Mike's treatment sessions. All of them. Margaret, Robert, both of Mike's sisters, and several cousins. They filed into the small room like a jury, their faces set in identical expressions of disapproval. We're here to talk sense into both of you, Margaret announced as if she was beginning a board meeting. This has gone on long enough. I looked at Mike, saw how pale and tired he looked in the hospital bed, and made a decision. Fine, I said, standing up. Let's talk, but not here. Meet me at our house tomorrow at 2 p.m. All of you. Emily, Mike started to protest, but I squeezed his hand. Trust me, I whispered. I know what I'm doing. That night, I made some calls of my own. Then I spent several hours going through security footage, text messages, and bank statements. By the time I was done, I had everything I needed. The next day, I was ready when the Andersons and the reinforcements arrived. They filed into our living room, looking around with expressions ranging from disapproval to pity. Margaret immediately took charge, standing in the center of the room like a prosecutor about to deliver her opening statement. But I spoke first. Before we start, I said, my voice steady. I have something to show you all. I pulled out my laptop and connected it to our TV screen. The family shifted uncomfortably on our antique furniture, exchanging glances as I pulled up the first video. This is security footage from a hospital parking lot, I explained, pressing play, from 3 weeks ago. The timestamp showed 2:47 p.m. On screen, Robert and Margaret's Mercedes pulled into a parking space. They sat in a car for several minutes, clearly having an animated discussion. Finally, they got out and walked toward the hospital entrance. This was during Mike's first major treatment session. I continued, my voice steady. The one that cost $47,000. The session you both promised to attend to support your son. Margaret's face tightened. We had an emergency. I held up my hand, fast-forwarding the footage. The timestamp now read 3:12 p.m. The Mercedes pulled out of the parking lot. You never even made it inside, I said quietly. You sat in your car for 25 minutes, then left. While your son was asking where you were, wondering why his parents weren't there during one of the scariest moments of his life. Robert cleared his throat. Now see here, Emily, one incident doesn't. I switched to another video. This one showed the hospital corridor outside Mike's room, date stamped from last week. Margaret walked past the room, glancing in through the window. She had a designer shopping bag in her hand. She kept walking. This was last Thursday, I said. When you told Mike you couldn't visit because you were sick in bed. Looks like you were well enough for shopping at Nordstrom, though. The room had grown very quiet. Mike's cousin Amy was staring at her hands. His sister Jennifer looked like she wanted to disappear into the couch. But here's what really interests me, I continued, pulling up a bank statement on the screen. Robert, you mentioned business has been difficult lately. That's why you couldn't help with Mike's treatment costs. But this is your company's quarterly earnings report. Public record, by the way. Would anyone like to guess how much your business made in profit last quarter alone? The numbers on the screen told the story. $2.3 million in pure profit. That's not relevant, Robert sputtered, his face turning red. Business finances are complex. Oh, I know all about complex finances, I cut in. Like how you managed to buy a vacation home in Aspen last month. or how you just put down deposits for a luxury cruise next spring, all while your son is fighting for his life, desperate for help with medical bills. Margaret jumped to her feet. How dare you spy on us? This is invasion of privacy. Privacy? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Like how you've been telling everyone who'll listen that I'm letting your son die because I won't sell our house. Like how you've been calling my workplace, trying to find out my salary details, a kind of privacy. I pulled up one final document on the screen. This is interesting too. The trust fund you set up for Mike when he was born. The one you've been controlling all these years, telling him it was only worth a few $1,000s. Want to tell everyone its actual value. Robert's face had gone from red to ashen. The trust fund balance glowed on the screen. $897,000. You see, I continued, my voice growing harder. While you've been orchestrating this campaign to force us to sell our home, while you've been painting me as the villain who won't make sacrifices for her husband, I've been doing some investigating. And you know what I discovered? You have the means to help your son. You've always had the means. You just don't want to. That's not true, Margaret protested, but her voice wavered. We just think selling the house is the most practical solution. Practical? My voice cracked like a whip. What's practical about forcing your son out of his home while he's fighting cancer? What's practical about watching him suffer when you could easily help? The truth is, you're not concerned about Mike's treatment at all. You just want to prove you were right about me all along. I turned to address the whole room. You all came here today thinking you were going to convince me to sell our home. Instead, let me tell you what's going to happen. Tomorrow morning, I'm sending this evidence, all of it, to every family member, every friend, every business associate. Everyone will know exactly how the wealthy Andersons treated their sick son. You wouldn't dare, Robert growled. Try me. I met his gaze steadily. Unless what? Margaret's voice was barely a whisper. Unless you do the right thing. Access Mike's trust fund, the one you've been lying about for years. Use your considerable resources to help your son instead of trying to punish his wife. Be actual parents for once in your lives. The silence that followed was deafening. Jennifer, Mike's sister, was the first to speak. Mom, Dad, she said quietly, Emily's right. What you've been doing, it's horrible. I can't believe I let you convince me. Amy stood up, tears in her eyes. Me too. I'm so sorry, Emily. We should have asked more questions instead of just believing. Robert and Margaret sat frozen, their carefully constructed facade crumbling around them. Finally, Robert pulled out his phone. I'll call the bank in the morning, he said, his voice rough. Well, we'll arrange the transfer for Mike's treatment. All of it, I insisted. And I want it in writing. They nodded, defeated. One by one, the family members filed out, most of them unable to meet my eyes. Margaret paused at the door. Emily, she started. Don't. I cut her off. Just do what you should have done from the beginning. Help your son. After they left, I sat in a quiet house for a long time, hands shaking as the adrenaline wore off. Then I drove to the hospital. Mike was awake when I arrived, looking better than he had in days. Hey, he smiled. How did the family meeting go? I sat beside him, taking his hand. Your parents are going to help with the treatment costs. All of them. His eyes widened. How did you? Let's just say I helped them see things differently. I squeezed his hand. And we're keeping our house. That was 2 months ago. The treatments have been going well. Dr. Stevens says Mike's body is responding better than expected. The cancer hasn't disappeared, but it's shrinking. We have hope. Robert and Margaret transferred the full amount for Mike's treatment the next day, along with a signed document acknowledging their obligation to cover any future medical costs. They've tried to visit a few times, but Mike isn't ready to see them yet. Neither am I. The rest of the family has been reaching out one by one, apologizing for their part in the situation. Some relationships might be salvageable with time. Others are probably broken for good. But that's okay. Last night, Mike and I sat on our wraparound porch watching the sunset. He's gaining strength every day, able to walk further, stay awake longer. The autumn air was crisp, and I'd wrapped him in his favorite blanket. I can't believe they lied about my trust fund all these years, he said quietly. About everything, really. I leaned my head on his shoulder. Are you okay? He was quiet for a moment. You know what? I am. because through all of this, I learned something important. Family isn't always about blood. Sometimes it's about who fights for you when everyone else is trying to tear you down. I smiled, snuggling closer. I'll always fight for you. I know, he whispered. That's why we're going to beat this. We sat there as the stars came out, in our dream home that we fought so hard to keep. The future is still uncertain. Cancer treatment is a long road with no guarantees. But we're facing it together, stronger for having weathered this storm. Sometimes the worst situations show you who people really are. My in-laws showed their true colors, but I showed mine too. And I'm proud of the person I proved myself to be.